right, so without further ado, Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I loved listening to Dr. Elijah. I thought he was terrific. Uh, if he had been around in 1974 when I came out, I would have made sure that I got to whatever church he was in. A
Right?
lot, shared a lot of wisdom.
Absolutely, he did. And Brian, I want to talk a little bit. I know I'm going to do a little intro for you at first, and then I think we were going to do kind of a back and forth dialogue. Now we do have challenges for another speaker that's following you, so we may wind up going long, which is
Oh,
fine
good,
because you and I could have a really good chat for quite a while,
good,
which I love.
good.
So Brian, for those of you who don't know Brian McNaught, I kind of want to speak a little to his background. Brian has been in this work for a significant time. I can literally say for longer than I've been alive, which is amazing. I was born in 1976, but in 1974, Brian started drawing on his personal experience and his skills as a sex educator to help audiences understand what it's like to grow up gay at a time when people didn't know and to deal with common daily challenges that LGBTQ people were facing at work, at home, in church, in their neighborhoods around the world. So, in many, many ways, Brian was a very important light for many of us. He authored 13 books on LGBTQ issues, some of which have actually become college textbooks themselves and taught others exactly who we are and what we are. He's addressed hundreds of people in professional and university audiences throughout really the world, North America, Europe, Australia, and Asia. He is a strong gay activist in the Catholic Church, a political activist with some significant efforts in the AIDS epidemic and some leadership in Boston, especially. He wrote a a essay called "Dear Anita: Late Night Thoughts of an Irish Catholic Homosexual." He wrote that the night that Anita Bryant famously successfully blocked non-discriminatory ordinances in Dade County, Florida, which was a pretty significant moment for the country. And that is one of the most reprinted and studied gay-themed essays. Brian has presented his thoughts on the workplace to senior leaders of the National Security Agency, that's at the federal level with people like the CIA and FBI. He's a college speaker, he's a sex trainer, he is a corporate diversity teacher, and he's also happily married to Ray Struble, who's been together with him since 1976 when I was born. So I just feel like I am in the company of greatness, Brian. It's so wonderful to spend time with
Thank
you
you,
here.
Helen. Thank you. And I didn't plan any of it. I didn't plan. There are 7 DVDs out, many of which have been aired nationally at a time in which people would watch them secretly and feel affirmed for being gay. But I didn't plan any of it. I mean, I before COVID, the banks, Wall Street firms were taking me to Mumbai and Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo. And it was the first time in all of those countries in which a person spoke on uh, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender issues uh, to corporate audiences. In fact, Helmut, they told me that when I went to Singapore, that when I went through customs and immigration, they said, do not tell them what you're speaking on because they will put you on a plane, the next plane home. Because
Really?
yes, that happened to a professor in Canada. He was sent home immediately when he mentioned that he was doing something on gay issues. So I said, diversity issues, and they sort of eyes blank over. But can I say something? One of the things that I am most pleased by, uh, people often ask me, are things different? Well, of course they're different. In 1974, when I was fired for being gay by a Catholic newspaper in Detroit, the Michigan Catholic. I went on a hunger strike to draw the attention of the bishops to the plight of gay people in the church. Uh, and I got this secret invitation to come to Chicago and attend the gathering of the Catholic Press Association. They said, Brian, we can't invite you, but we won't stop you if you want to come. So I went there, and my clothes were hanging off me because I've lost so much weight. And when they were finished, I raised my hand and I said, all I'm asking is that you tell the truth. You say what is true about gay people, that the American Psychiatric Association has removed it from its list of disorders. Evelyn Hooker's study and comparing gay and straight men and the fact that they were equally emotionally healthy. Ford and Beach study that homosexuality exists in every species of mammal. Blah 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 blah. So then the editor of the U.S. Catholic, which is a very big thing in the Catholic Church, said, well, Brian, will you write it? And I said, sure. So I wrote this essay that was called The Sad Dilemma of the Gay Catholic. And lo and behold, in 1975, it won the Catholic Press Association's award for Best Magazine Article of the Year. Now, that may not surprise any of you because you're out, you've got gay lawyers, you've got gay doctors and dentists, but to have the Catholic Press Association award a gay person in 1975, best magazine, it was phenomenal. But again, I didn't plan it. I didn't, they asked, two of my DVDs, I was on my way to, and I actually, and Gabrielle would appreciate this. I was the first person to do transgender training in a corporation and at the NSA. I was contact when I was fired. I ended up for 11 years speaking to a couple hundred universities, and I had a couple books out, and they were using the books in the university. And then I got invited to the corporation in 1985, brought me in to speak. And of course, once word got out, every corporation in the country wanted a training on uh, diversity training on LGBTQ issues. And the New York Times called me the godfather of gay diversity training, because anyone who wanted to do the training, I would bring them to my training and have them watch what I did and why it's successful. And my great success was exactly what Dr. Elijah was talking about, which is that you put a face on the issue, right? Because in 50 years, and it's been 50 years, this is my 50th anniversary of doing LGBTQ work full time. Uh, uh, in my 50 years, the most successful thing I've done is tell people who I am. And
Right.
the other side of that is listening to them explain why they feel the way they do. Uh, but I was flying to Denver to do a training with Hewlett Packard and I think Lucent Technologies. And one of them had a transgender cross dresser and the other had a transsexual. And so the local television station, business educational station, called me and said, will you do a 1 hour presentation for us in front of a studio audience on being gay? Because my first video was called On Being Gay. My first book, that sold over 50,000 copies back, you know, you were scared, in 50, Amazon did not exist back at that time. You didn't just order a book and have it delivered. You had to walk into a bookstore, pull the book off the shelf, and hand it to the salesperson. So 50,000 people did that at the time my book was published. Well, anyway, so would you do a program for us on being gay? And I said, sure. And they said, well, would you do another one at the same time for us on gay issues in the workplace? They said, bring a different shirt and a different tie. and we'll and we'll mix the audience up so they don't look like no one recognizes that they were there, for the first
Sure.
video. Yeah. So it ended up on a educational satellite, and all kinds of stations around the country were showing it at home. But when people say things change, I look at you, Helmut. You know, I'm so excited about you. I'm so excited about what you're doing. And w when I came out, the first group that invited me to speak. Well, I should tell you this first, and Elijah would like this story. Uh, in 1974, I founded the first chapter of Dignity, which is a gay Catholic group in Detroit. And I was at the same time a respected columnist, reporter, speaker at father-daughter luncheons, senior citizen, affairs. And a reporter from the Detroit News called me at home and said, Brian, I'm doing a story on homosexuality and religion, and the diocese gave me this number for Dignity. And I said, yes, I knew her, but I hadn't come out to her yet. So I said, yes, I'm gay. And she said, well, I'm doing this story. Will you consent to being interviewed? And a historian asked me recently, why did you say yes? Because you could have said no, and none of this would have happened. But I say yes to the universe every single time the
Mhm.
universe offers an opportunity. I say yes to it, and that's led to a 3-minute animated movie based on my children's book, What's Gay Asked May, winning Best Animated Film at the Toronto Film Festival. All this stuff, happens from saying yes. But anyway, when I said yes, uh, everything exploded. It just exploded. And people at work quit talking to me. They signed petitions saying they objected to me using the paper as a platform for my agenda. What agenda? I didn't have an agenda.
Being alive.
Yes, what's the gay agenda? Falling in love, having a partner, sharing a home, uh, having a relationship with God, having a good relationship with your family. That's my agenda. Throw in a dog and I'm very happy, right? So, uh, so the first moment after I was fired, they dropped my column first. The first day after the article appeared, I walked into work and they called me into the editor's office and they said, "We're dropping your column." And wow, because it had won an award, so why
Right.
would you drop the column? Well, we've had cancellations of advertising because of you, and we can't afford that. So I went back to my desk, and the reporter from the Detroit News called and said, "Hi, has there been any reaction to my article?" I said, "Yeah, they just dropped my column." And so the next day, the Detroit News had an 8-column headline: Catholic newspaper drops column by homosexual. This was 1974, right? So
Yeah.
suddenly I was not Brian McNaught anymore. I was not the senior class president in high school. My name helmet was taken off the Christian Leadership Award plaque. The brothers, I went to an all Catholic school, all boys school. The brothers unanimously voted me the Christian Leadership Award. And when I came out, my name was taken off the plaque. So suddenly I was not, the middle child of this Irish Catholic family. My dad was an executive at General Motors. And um, in the beginning conversations, and this is the first time that I've had this thought, Helmut. I've always regretted the pain that my mom and dad experienced with all the publicity about me, because I was on every radio, television station, every newspaper across the country in 1974. Okay. And I thought, oh, I wish that there was a way to have protected my mom and dad. But you know what? Straight people who go through hell because their kid comes out are also the people who have made it possible for us to be where we are. We
Exactly.
owe an enormous amount to straight allies. You know, it was
Exactly.
my mother's cousin was a nun, and mom was nervous, and so Sister Marcella said to my mom, Virginia, he's the same boy he was yesterday. the same lovable guy. Nothing has changed. So, so my job became putting a face on the issue. And some people say, what was it like back in '74? Well, the first group that asked me to speak was in a Bible study group at a private home. And I went to the door and knocked on the door, and the homeowner came to the door and said, thank you for coming, Brian, but I should let you know the lady in the green blazer said that she's going to throw up when you walk in the room. Now, me? I mean, this is the guy who, everybody loved, who wanted to speak at their conferences. How would she throw up? Well, because the image of a homosexual was so hideous in 1970. There was no Anderson Cooper or Ellen DeGeneres. There was nobody on television that was gay. Nobody was out, except radical people, right?
Right. There was
Or
only a
what?
demonization, right? A demonization of what we were,
That's
what we
and
could
that's
be.
why Anita Bryant was so successful. And her campaign was protect the children. The right wing they're doing it right now with all the trans bills. All these trans bills are in red states. They're not in blue states. There's not legislation in any blue state that is trying to prevent transgender children from getting the medical attention they need. It is the Republican agenda, and it was and when they got after the election, all these legislatures got the same rules. They say first go after the transsexuals. They were the low fruit, right?
Yep.
Pick them,
Yep.
they were easy to pick before you got to the other things. Well, what's important is the lady in the green blazer was the last one to leave that night. And and so what I learned, and Elijah would agree with this, is that ignorance or lack of information is the parent of fear, and fear is the parent of hatred, right? So what you help people do is get past their fear by standing in front of them, telling your story, and having them think, I, I, I just didn't want to come into this thing today. They forced me to come into. I really like this guy. He made me laugh for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I can be,
Which is why I think the visibility is so important, right? That's why I don't know if you've seen
oh,
Dr. Elijah has been traveling, doing a lot of different, very similar to your work, right? Doing a lot of um, different interviews because the visibility of trans men and women is so important right now because once you see them, once you realize they're just humans, you kind of move past the fear, right?
right. And I'm no longer the right person to be doing trans education in the workplace. I did it because I didn't want to leave it out.
Right,
I
of
was
course.
basically brought in to talk about gay and lesbian issues, but I included everybody. And I did a section on gender identity, gender role, gender expression. Those were three things that people confused. So I transgender people are the people who need to be in the workplace, putting a face on the issue for people in the audience,
Yeah.
because their stories are the things that are going to change people's hearts. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I talking about changing people's hearts. So shut me up when you're ready. But I got on a plane one time. I had just done two sessions uh, for a bank or one. I had like 60 corporate clients, including the State Department and the NSA, and so I had done a couple sessions. I was so tired because it's so physically exhausting because I reach really deep. And I tell my story. I talk about drinking a bottle of turpentine when I was 26 years old, before all of this happened. Why did I drink the turpentine? Not because I didn't like being gay, but I didn't see a future. I
Mhm.
thought once I come out, I'm going to be fired. My parents won't love me. I was in a relationship with an Episcopal priest who was emotionally abusive. I thought, I have no life. And so I drank the turpentine, got my stomach pumped, and I promised
Clearly,
myself, yeah, oh yeah,
because you're here.
I had to go down to the hospital, and they put a tube down my nose and throat. They pumped my stomach, and
Yeah.
they said, you can't leave until a psychiatrist talks to you. And I said, listen, I'm fine. That's never going to happen again. I swore to myself, age 26 in 1974, that I was never again going to live my life based on people's images or expectations of Brian McNaught. If they wanted to love Brian McNaught, they needed to know who I was. I have a memoir coming out this year. I'm so excited about it. Seriously, it's a great story, and it's called "A Prince of a Boy," which is what the nuns called me in 8th grade. And the next line is how one gay Catholic helped change the world. Did you have a question? Because I want to tell you a story that you'll love.
Yeah, no. So I just shared your email. If anyone wants to email Brian, you can email him and be on the list to get the notification for that. So
Absolutely. It's Brian at brian-mcnaught.com. And if they go to my website, all of my videos are free. I used to sell them, but they're now all free, and half of my books are free. So they can download, probably close to 13 books if they want to. But so I got on this plane, right, heading back to Atlanta, where Ray and I lived at the time. In 1991, Helmut, Ray Struble, my spouse, was the openly gay head of the office for Lehman Brothers in Atlanta. Ray
wow.
was the first openly gay person on Wall Street. He had a rainbow flag in his pencil holder, and he was an executive. But at any rate, I sit next to this guy on the airplane, and we start talking. He said, "You going home?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going home too." He said, I said to him, "Well, what work do you do?" And he said, "Well, I think I'm best known for being a fundamentalist Christian uh, leader in moral issues in the workplace." Well, immediately a bubble is over my
You're
head.
like, oh my
Uh,
gosh, great,
of
great timing.
of all the seats in the plane you chose to sit in, you're sitting next to this guy. But like Elijah, I said, "Well, tell me about it." So he said, "Well, I got awards from George Bush, and I've been featured in Inc. and Fortune magazine." And he said, "But enough about me. How about you?" So I said, "Well, I do training on gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender issues in the workplace." And of course, a bubble was over his head that
Of
said, of
course.
all the seats on the plane I had to be in, I'm sitting next to this gay guy. Uh, but he said to me, "Why would they have you come in? I don't understand it." And I said, "Well, let's say you're gay, all right, and people know it, and you walk into your office one day, and there's a piece of paper on your computer that says Leviticus 18:22. They'd think I don't know these verses that they quote all
Right.
the time.
That you've
A man
memorized.
shall not lie with a man as with a woman, such is an abomination. I said, "So how would you feel about that if you were gay?" He said, I would be upset about it. And I said, "Yes. And how much work would you get done that day?" He said, "I wouldn't get any work done because I'd be trying to figure out who left it on my station." I said, "Well, that's why they bring me in. They bring me in so that that won't happen, right? My job is to help them create an environment in which everyone feels safe and valued." And that was true in Tokyo and in Mumbai and in all these other places. And people said, "Oh, you're never going to get the response in Singapore that you get elsewhere." Without waving the flag, I would normally get a standing ovation in both corporations and in colleges because people were so excited to
Well,
get
yeah,
past their fear. They got past their fear.
right.
So
And it was, I mean, you think about how many people weren't able to say and articulate that, but you were being able to be a voice and be a human in front of
Well,
them.
yeah,
Challenge.
I got into a cab one time in Chicago, and I said, "Would you take me to the Sheraton, please?" I was doing training in Chicago,
Mhm.
and he said, "Okay." He said, "Are you married?" And I said, "Well, I'm gay and I have a partner, but I can't legally marry." He said, "You're gay?" He says, "Well, as long as you don't come after me or my kids, I'm fine with that." And I said, "Please, no offense, but why would you think I'd be attracted to you?" And when I tell that story in corporations, the women go crazy. They think, know,
Right,
because
right, right, right.
all these men think that, we're going to find them all attractive when we don't. But anyway, quick story, because this is a really powerful one. The guy sitting next to me on the plane said, "Well, tell me what you do in your workshop." And I said, "Well, basically, I tell my story." He said, "Well, I don't know anybody gay. Tell me your story." So I told him my story. And Helmut, when we landed in Atlanta, he said to me, "Brian, as sure as I'm sitting in this seat, I know that God had you sit next to me, and I will never think about this issue in the same way again." So he
Yeah.
pulled out a copy of, you know, Fortune magazine and signed it for me. So I pulled out a copy of my book, Gay Issues in the Workplace, and gave it to him. But, that's how it happened, one at a time, at a time, at a time. Have we
No,
run
it
out
does.
of time?
So you've seen things change so significantly, right? And you've been a part of that change
Yeah,
to where we are today. Um, I had a question for you really towards the concept of um, the state of LGBTQ lives, right? So now you can kind of say, okay, you're kind of fighting for us all to be able to get a chance to get at the table, right? Where
right.
are the areas, and I know we didn't prep this, so it's just a curiosity. We may wind up going longer because I think we're still struggling to have Mike on, which I said we'll be fine until we do. Oh, I see, he's on. Good, good, good.
Hi,
But I
Mike.
am curious. I am curious. What would you say are the areas of focus that you see in the community that we could improve or we could help each other out?
Uh, uh, the first
Like,
and most important is that we love ourselves, uh, and that we seriously. I mean, people say, "Oh, that's so boring," but it's the truth. If you don't love yourself, then you can't love anybody else, right? And if you don't love yourself, I would tell people, don't go to your parents and cry when you tell them that you're gay. Why? Because it's a problem they think they have to fix because you're crying. I said, come out to them and say, "Mom and Dad, I have something to share with you, something important to me. I happen to be gay." And it's not something you have to fix, right? What I'm concerned
hey,
about,
sorry, Brian. Hey, Mike,
yeah,
we'll bring you on a little later, okay? Okay.
was he supposed to be on now?
No, not yet, not yet.
He can join us. Have Mike join us. We're friends.
Right?
Yeah, let's have a triad or a triplet or what do they call it?
Trio.
Yeah, yeah, threesome. Uh, so a lot of guys will say to me, "I'm over 40 and I'm invisible." They say, "I walk into a gay bar and I'm invisible." And I said, "You're invisible because you're hoping to be looked at, right? And you're hoping that these 20-year-olds are going to be interested in you, and you're hurt when they're not. But what if you had a group of friends at the end of the bar that you were meeting? You'd walk into the bar, you wouldn't look at the 20-year-olds, you'd look at your friends, and you'd have a great time. What would that be like? Right?
Right. It's a shift in what you're searching, right? So I'm not searching um for a sexual love or for an intimacy love of that nature. I might be looking for that too, but in reality, are you looking for the connection of camaraderie? Are you looking for the connection of loving, supporting family, especially for many of the gay and lesbian individuals who don't have support from their actual biological family?
Yeah, Mike has a lot of wonderful stories to tell you with his photographs. Um, but that's the truth is, you know, and the other question, Helmet, is how much am I willing to give up in order to have this partner? How much of myself am I willing to give up in order to have love from somebody who I shouldn't be with, right? So you got to love yourself enough to say, no, it's not enough for me. I'm worth more than that.
Right. And I think a lot of it also is I got to love myself enough to do the work, to be lovable, right?
Yeah.
Do I have self-control? Do I actually take care of myself on my own? Do I direct my life? Do I direct my path? Do substances control me? Right?
To
Does
and
my work control me?
exactly. Both Ray and I are in, AA and, um, I quit drinking and he quit drinking, 40 years ago. But and that's part of self-love too. But watching this series that you're doing is self-love. It's taking the time out of your day to say, it's important enough to me to sit and listen to these folks give their perspective, right? And I
Yeah,
think, and people will say, and then I'll shut up because it's Mike's
yeah, you're
turn.
fine, Brian.
People will say, we're losing our rights. Clarence Thomas said he wants to revisit marriage equality on the Supreme Court. And people are saying, we're going to lose all our rights. No, we're not. In Florida, you know how DeSantis said you can't say gay and da 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 da. They just had a settlement that said you can't teach a course from K through 12 about homosexuality, but you can have discussions in the classroom. You can have books. Kids can tell you're gay because they were sued. And that's what we're going to do with all of these cases, that shouldn't have never been passed. They're going to go to court. They're going to spend a lot of money defending themselves and they're going to lose. But let's say real quickly that everything was taken away from us. Well, the one thing they can't take away from us is our self-esteem. You know, I love myself enough. Oh, is Mike making all that noise?
I think so. Let me check.
uh, uh, the one thing they can't take away from me or you, Helmut, is the love that we have for ourselves. We're never, ever, ever going to not be happy being gay.
Well, I think the reality too is, we had this conversation. You all were in a functional relationship, committed to each other well before someone officially said you could use the stamp, right? So
Oh,
you found love. You
yeah.
found love and maintained that love regardless of what the state said.
And Helmut, when we were in Boston, Ray and I met through Dignity, and we lived in the same apartment. We shared an apartment. And when we were together for 6 months, people said, "Oh my God, you're role models. We don't know anyone who's been together 6 months." And we celebrate our 48th year together this year in May.
That's great. 48 years, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
That's
50
amazing.
years of activism and 48 of being married to the most wonderful person in the world. For
That's
me,
wonderful. Yeah,
yeah.
of course for you.
Well, Helmut, one thing you should know is that everywhere I spoke in the world, when I got back to my hotel room, the first thing I did was call Ray. And he wanted to know, how did it go? Did you have any bad hostile people? Did you get a big award or applause? He was my partner because I wasn't part of an organization. I wasn't part. There weren't other people on my team. I was by myself. So calling Ray, he was part of my team, and I never would have achieved what I have achieved if it weren't for him and his
Oh,
financial support and his moral
yeah.
support.
That's a beautiful love story, sir.
It is. Yeah, I have a book out called "Are You Guys Brothers?" and it talks about that. And my last book is called "On Being Gay and Gray." How do you age gracefully, and what wisdom do you have to share with others? I created a page on Facebook called "A Parliament of Snowy Owl Elders." I want gay people, older gay people, to think of themselves as elders, not elderly, and that we
Hmm.
have a lot to share, right? The snowy owl is my spirit animal, and a collection of owls is called a parliament, believe it or not. So, I've got all these guys that we, exchanged wisdoms, and that's what we need to do. We need to keep sharing, keep staying involved, and keep supporting people like you who are now taking the torch.
Yeah, so this is kind of, we are actually part of the reason I was excited about the master classes, because obviously we will record this, it's being recorded and we'll share it. But we're really actually modeling the point of the nonprofit, which is to really encourage this sort of intergenerational connection and
Yeah,
dialogue.
yeah,
You were talking about your intentionality for that in your own life. You want to share with our listeners what it is that you do to foster sort of this connection in your lives?
Okay, so this is going to be too much for some of you, all right? But I was raised Roman Catholic. I'm not. I don't embrace Catholic doctrine, all right? But I went to Catholic schools for 12 years. No, 16 years. Uh, and when I was a little kid, I'd be in church praying, and I would feel a tingle go up and down my back. And as a little kid, I said to God, use me, use me.
Hmm.
So my whole life, I've been asked, I have asked to be used as a healer. And, you know, once I came out, I got, Helmut, I got hundreds and hundreds of letters. See, there was no typing on the internet. These were handwritten and I answered every single one of them. And every single letter I got is now at Cornell University in the Human Sexuality Archive. I gave them all of Ray's and my photo albums and all of my papers, etc. So my intentionality, uh, okay, the quick story. I keep saying that.
No, it's
A
good. We
pre,
have time. We're gonna go into our break, which is fine, and then we'll pick up with Mike. So we're
okay,
good. Good with
okay,
time.
okay. So the priest went into the first graders, right? And he said, "Who can tell me what a saint is?" And a little boy in the back of the room shook his hand and he wanted to be recognized. "Okay, Jimmy, what's a saint?" And Jimmy stood up and he said, "It's that thing in the church that the light shines through." Well, obviously, Jimmy was talking about stained glass windows, but it's the best definition I've ever heard for being like St. Francis of Assisi. And we say that prayer every single day. I said it before every single speech, and I always gave God credit. You know, the Holy Spirit is what has guided my entire life. And I'm not ashamed to say this. Some gay people say, "Oh, God, here we go. Somebody who believes in God." I believe in something bigger than me. You know, you don't need to say God. You can say universe. You can say spirit and call it anything you want. But I want to be in union with it. And so I know that the light is shining and the only thing that stops it is my ego, right? So I've got to make sure that the window is clean by making sure my ego is in check, right?
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That you're
So
connected to the source, right?
the soul and the ego work together. Well, when I spoke at the NSA, ego is what enabled me to walk up the steps to the stage, right? Because otherwise I'd be too scared.
Yeah.
My ego said to me, "Listen, you've got this. You know, go on up. You're the best. You're the best in the country. They're getting they getting what they paid for." But once I started talking, it was my soul that spoke, right? And um, I'm going to take a minute to tell another story because this is a really good one. Do we have 2 minutes?
Well, we do, but I want to circle back to kind of the way that we started the story, which was this concept of how you create this connection in your own life today, right? How do you incorporate sort of intergenerational connection every day in your life? I think you told me about you have dinners and you encourage relationships with others, is what I
Yeah,
remember.
right. We have dinner guests, and most of them are totally surprised that one of the first things I talk about is sex. Not having sex, but they've never been given the opportunity to talk about sex, right? And that's a really important thing to talk about, I think. Uh, but every morning, Ray and I say, um, today I'm going to work to be the person I aspire to be, right? So that's my aspiration. And we say some prayers, St. Francis, blah, 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 blah. And so I believe that loving kindness is the best that we can do, right? I can't stop the war in the Middle East, but I can say good morning to the man who's packing the shelves at the grocery store, who's never talked to. You know, people walk by him all the time and never say good morning. You know, I say good morning, how you doing? And they're shocked, you know. And they say, do you need anything? Can I help you find anything? I said, no, just wanted to say hi. You know, how you doing? Not so good today. Come on here. Get a hug. Come on in here. Right? That's
Right.
that's loving kindness. And so some of them know they're getting hugged by a gay man and they love it, right? Some
Yeah,
gay
because
men, yeah, some gay men see me coming and they know a hug is on the way and they don't want any part of it. Push that, push that cart.
yeah, no, we're not all I guess in the same place to accept it, but I think your point is really important, right? Which is the being of the human being part, right? The what who do I want to be today?
Who do I
And
want to be?
yeah,
And I think, Helmut, I think you're terrific. I really do. You have an energy. And Ray was over listening when you and I were talking last, and he said, "Who was that?" He said, "I liked him." I said, "Yeah, I liked him too." You know,
yeah, it's kind of
It-
fun,
you're,
you know. I will tell you, you kind of to your point, you we've had this conversation. You get to sort of be delightfully gay, and then you also get to be I mean, one of my greatest blessings is being a father. And so it
uh,
kind of changes and shifts your energy into really listening, encouraging, and desiring the best outcome for those around you, right?
well, I actually feel that gay men who were married and had children and then come out tend to be more responsible than gay men who have never had any responsibility.
Yeah.
You can count on them more to be on your board or to, you know, be a volunteer because they've taken responsibility most of their life. They had to with their kids, right?
Yeah.
Keeping a marriage going when they knew they were gay and the wife didn't know.
Right. That's certainly true. There's also certainly some truth to I keep going back to, and I think it's just because I have two tribes that are Native American in me, and I don't know the parts of me because those stories in my family line were removed, right, so quickly. Um, but I always think of the fact that, you know, LGBTQ people were tribe leaders. The two-spirited nature of an
Mhm.
individual that's in our community is the real essence, right? Whether it's in I see it in Marcy, I see it in Gabrielle, I see it in you, I see it in Elijah. And actually, I think actually straight people can tap into both spirits as well. But for so many of us, it's that connectivity, right, to both that allow us or enable us to do so many great things as leaders and
And
as
to
tribe.
like people. You have to
Yeah, well,
like
that too. But if you think,
people. Some people don't like people. You know,
yeah,
I love people. Can I say one thing though? I encourage everyone who's listening to try not to say all the time LGBTQ. Why?
oh, that's
Because
right.
some people think it's a sandwich, but it allows you and the straight person not to say the words lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. You're allowing them not to say it, right? They can just say LGBTQ, and that's nothing. So when I was at the NSA, I said to the audience, one of the things I want you to do tonight is go home and sit at your table, dinner table, talk to your family about their day, and then I want you to say, I was at a presentation today on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues. And it was terrific. This guy was great. So,
Right.
so,
It was
so the
amazing.
oh, he was incredible. So the next day, I got an email from one of the top people in the NSA who said, Brian, you changed my life. He said, I
Mm.
did what you told me to do. I went home and I sat at the table and I said, I was at a presentation on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues. And he said, an hour later, my teenage daughter walked into the bedroom and said, Dad, we need to talk. I'm a lesbian.
There you
She
go.
never would have, she never would have said it if he had not used the word in a respectful way. And then he said, Brian, I did what you told us all to do. I say to an audience, what's the first thing you say when somebody tells you that they're gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender? What's the first thing you say? And it gets quiet, you know. I say, you say thank you because of all the people that we could be sharing this with, we picked you, right?
Yeah, too.
And so I said to my daughter, honey, thank you for telling me. Well, she burst into tears and I burst into tears and we were hugging and he said, my life is never going to be the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, Brian, this has been a pleasure. I feel like I know that we could talk for a long time about many,
Yeah,
many topics. I um I
we'll do
did
it again.
share with the group in the chat. I did share Brian's email. We'll share Brian's email as well again in the and his website in the after notes from the session. Brian, it's such an honor to have you join us for this first
Thank,
masterclass
thank
as we
you.
embark on telling our stories, our real
Yeah,
life stories, and our real heroes. So,
I
um,
thank you.
it's been a sincere pleasure. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
And thank you for the work you're doing.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to do. It's a pleasure to get to do. All right, so I'm going to show you all one real quick screen. We'll just do a quick screen for you. This is just quick ask for you. If you can help us out in 3 different ways at the Gaily Impact. Um, ooh, let's see here. First is we do this. This is free. So for those of you who want to donate, there is a QR code there, or you can check out thegailyimpact.org. And we, of course, will take any donations that we can as we look to sponsor this event. It's like about 25 bucks, we think, is about the cost for someone to attend this from an infrastructure perspective. And of course, you can donate more. We also are looking for sponsors. So if you are someone who knows someone who may be able to give in a more significant way, you can QR code the referral for sponsors and let us know who that person is or what that contact is. We greatly appreciate that. And then we're going to actually be doing some exciting events coming up. We're going to be emailing those who are attending, and we're excited to offer some ways to engage the Gaily Impact as we build through our first year of existence. Yay, so fun. All right.